He's never been in a real physical fight, so why does he like to play these violent video games? Is this normal? I worry that he gets desensitized to the violence.
I don't know what he would do if he ever seen violence in real life.
In my research on young teens and video games, one thing that surprised me a little was how many teens, both boys and girls, play video games with violent content. One charge that's often made against violence in video games and other media is that it might desensitize children to violence in the real world. In other words, could watching lots of gore and not seeing the consequences that violence would have in real life make children less concerned about suffering or reduce their empathy for victims? It's not unusual to see a group of boys playing a violent game with lots of laughing and teasing. But what's really going on? Much of that behavior reflects normal teen development, especially for boys who tend to watch action or horror movies, aggressive sports, and other emotionally charged entertainment in groups.
Look at that. If you kill me with one shot.
And there's tremendous social pressure to try games that push the envelope on what adults think is appropriate, including games with violence. But there's an underlying assumption here that violence in video games and movies is similar enough to real-world violence that being desensitized to one makes you less concerned about the other. Do teens really see video game violence as like real life? And what makes a video game realistic?
All those in favor say aye.
Research suggests that teens do like video games that include some elements of realism, such as historical facts, characters that feel real in the way they talk or the emotions they express, realistic graphics, or characters that evolve based on their experiences. Aside from the graphics, it sounds a lot like what appeals to us about a good novel. As one boy told me, the really violent video games where you can just go around killing anybody, they're less realistic. The environment, the people are real, but not the actions.
How do you make the other guys move?
In my focus group studies with young teen boys, I was struck by the two things that most concerned them about video game content. First was language. They didn't want to expose a little brother or sister to games with swearing, because the child might copy the bad language. And as one boy said, that could make my family look bad, like my mom isn't raising us regular. The second big concern of teen boys? Games where the characters can kiss each other. Some felt they shouldn't be exposed to that kind of game until they were 15 or 16. Think about that, swearing and kissing. Those are two things that boys can do, and in fact are almost certain to do, in real life. They know they're not going to kill zombies with chainsaws. They were clear on the line between fantasy and reality. In fact, several boys told me that they were much more upset by TV news than by gory games. As one said, well, I play video games and I go, oh, that stuff won't happen. But if I see it happen on the news, it kind of freaks me out. Child psychiatrists and psychologists say that a kid who is repeatedly exposed to violence in his home or neighborhood sometimes learns to numb himself to violence. But the way a typical kid acts and feels if he sees a friend hurt is very different from the way he reacts to the violence in a video game. Let me be clear, I'm not ruling out the possibility that an already troubled teen might be badly influenced by a particular violent video game or movie. We need more research to understand which children might be more easily influenced by media violence and what we can do to reduce the risk of harm. But what can you say to your own kids? There is definitely media content that kids below a certain age or children with certain temperaments are not ready for. And you need to talk to your child about your values and your feelings about specific types and uses of violence in the media, especially because you can't control what your child plays or watches when he's away from home.
What was that, seriously?
There's a lot of research that shows that children are influenced overwhelmingly by the values and behavior of their parents. That doesn't mean they'll always do what you want. Rebelling against restrictions is part of the job description of being a teenager.
That is not a sniper
No,
rifle.
But what you say and do helps frame the way your kids will interpret violent content they see in the media. I'm Dr. Cheryl Olson.